Alright, the Lakers keep the wins rolling, and as expected, the Bulls were having their big shower switch in Luka and Braun's screening actions, but unexpectedly, they weren't willing to commit a hard double on their ones, so that's where Luka and Braun were doing a lot of their damage. In the post, one of them just had to attack their matchup or hunt a mismatch, and it was more surprising to see that from Luka, because he usually does a lot of his damage in ball screens. But I think some of that was also stemming from the Bulls trying to hide Vooch. Most times, the Bulls were using Jalen as the big, and there were even instances where they zoned up just to avoid bringing Vooch into the action. So Luka wasn't calling for as many SNRs, because he could feast on their guards just as easily. The only time they were willing to have Vooch in the action was in Braun's ball screens, and I can somewhat understand why, because as I've said before, Braun's adjusted to an old man game, so instead of manipulating the SNRs as much as he used to, he's usually getting post touches in that half court. If it's not a post touch, then it's a run out in transition, because he's still as dangerous in the open floor. So those are by far his easiest scoring opportunities, and he was either scoring on one or the other in the first half. One of the runouts was off a bounce ahead from Luka, and for some reason, whoever does the box score wrongly credited Laravia, because it was clearly Luka that made that pass, so Luka should have had 12 assists instead of 11 on paper. But even the others were getting some of the same buckets as Braun, because in the half court, the Bulls were also allowing them to play ones, and the Bulls had severe turnover issues in the first half, so in transition, the others were also capitalizing on runouts. Those turnovers were the Bulls' main issue on offense, because they damn near committed every type, from a travel, to a carry, to an offensive foul, to stepping out of bounds, and to all the terrible passes, especially the overthrown ones or the ones that were easy pickings, so the Lakers got to feast on all of them. If it weren't for those, their offense would have been fine, because they were creating quality looks when they were executing, and a lot of that was stemming from the Lakers constantly mixing up their coverages. With Ayton as the big, the Lakers usually read 1 through 5, then with Hayes as the big, they usually mix it up more, because he's more versatile, so they can have him switch or show, and they can even use him in zone, but in the first half, there was too much dropping from both of them. That was allowing Kobe and Giddey to exploit that space, and as a team, they just weren't that attentive, because they were late on red sometimes, or even worse, they were caught ball watching throughout, so they were losing track of their man at times. That was one of the ways the Bulls were triggering the scramble, because they were being forced to peel for one another, so there were a lot of mini closeouts for the Bulls to attack, and that's without even mentioning the transition opportunities. All of those eventually caught up to him in the third, because the Bulls were able to get a numbers advantage a couple times that led to wide open treys, and those ignited a big 21-7 run that shifted the momentum in their favor, so they cut the lead from 15-1 quick. Even though the Lakers' adjustment was to exclusively have their big switch in any screening actions, AIM was a liability during that stretch, so it was smart of JJ to put Hayes in, because once Hayes subbed in, they were able to dead any potential comeback from the Bulls, and he was basically the opposite of Ayton. His athleticism just allows him to cover a lot more ground, so in zone, he could protect the paint while still closing out the shooters. Then in man, he can stay in front of guards, and then in the fourth, he just continued doing the same thing. His defense made him the unsung hero on the night, because without it, the Lakers wouldn't have been able to get the stops they needed in the second half, and on the other end, without Luka's offense, they wouldn't have been able to score the buckets they needed, especially in the third. The Bulls were more willing to bring Vooch into the action, so Luka was running a lot more SNRs, and even a lot of three-man actions, because every time he ran a double drag or Spain, that allowed him to still bring in a matchup he wanted. He was basically bringing 2 to 3 bodies in his screening actions, and if it wasn't him exploiting them, then it was the others exploiting the backside, because he was generating open looks for them to eat, so they were getting their own advantages. The main beneficiary was Rui, because his jumper's been pure on the catch, so in the fourth, JJ even ran a couple pin downs for him, and it was no different for Luka once he subbed back in. Those two could not miss in the second half, so the Bulls' only adjustment didn't make sense, because they started firing on Braun's post touches, but he didn't have the hot hand, those two did, and he just had to basically be a facilitator for them. This was one of Luka's most complete performances, because in the first half, he was playing in the post, then in the third, he was manipulating screens on the rock, then in the fourth, he was playing off the rock, so he really dropped 46 in a variety of ways, and the only downside to his night was the box score people screwing him off an assist. Just watch the tape.